So if you're like a lot of people, when you open a new camera or you open up a camera cage system for the first time, you're looking at it and you're thinking, there's too much here. I don't know where to even start. How do I get this thing going? And I always make sure to tell people it's not as complicated as you actually think it is. The cage is essentially grown-up Legos. You're gonna be putting this thing together how you feel comfortable. And the camera today, I'm going to talk to you about the most easy settings that you can set this to where you don't have to do a lot of stuff after the fact. Let's talk about the camera cage first. So you could just attach a lens to the camera and hold it and shoot like this if you really wanted to. But when you add the cage system, you start adding things like a top handle or a side handle to get a better grip, because eventually these cameras get kind of heavy feeling. So the better grip that you have, the easier it is to just continue to get good shots. But then you also open up the opportunity to add external storage that's faster. You don't have to worry about losing the footage or anything weird like that. And you can add holders. So we're gonna start from the very basics. So with the cage system, you've got a screw in the top, and you have a screw and a plate that goes in the bottom. With those screws, you may be thinking, how do I fasten them? On the bottom of your cage, you're gonna see a magnet is holding a tiny Allen wrench. So let's set that to the side. That top screw is gonna go right here, and you're going to slide the camera in place like this, all right? Now hold on to it, take the screw, and you're gonna line it up with where you see a hole in the top of the camera. You're just gonna tighten it. Now don't tighten it all the way yet, but just enough to kind of secure it. So you're gonna flip the camera over, and you're gonna see where this little plate goes, and you're going to press it down until you feel it kind of secure to a screw that is on the bottom of the camera. Tighten down the screw. You're gonna want to get the bottom screw pretty tight right away, but it was just a matter of making sure that all of them were lined up. So go ahead and tighten this all the way down, and then go back up to the top and tighten that all the way down. A lot of times people never take the cage off, they just leave it on, and it's the accessories that they take on and off for if they're having to pack them or throw them in a backpack or something like that. Or maybe you just don't need a handle if it's on a tripod. So the next thing is that we're going to talk about this side handle. It's got this little L-shaped piece, and then on the actual handle, there's a spot that it secures into the side. You're gonna have two little screws that are gonna go straight down into the side of the handle. You'll see I've dropped one of the screws, but I'm not gonna tighten it all the way, because sometimes if you are tightening an accessory and it has two screws, and you start putting one all the way down, it does something weird where it kind of bites. And so you want to kind of alternate, like twist that one down a little bit, this one, that one, until both are all the way secure. So now you've got the L-shaped handle on there. And so when you look at the side of this cage, you see a bunch of screw holes there. And this is where it's a little like Legos. You can just pick a spot that you think is most comfortable and kind of twist it in place. Now, the handle is secure, but if you notice it's a little low, I'm gonna slightly loosen these side screws that are through the handle, and I'm gonna be able to just slide it up to where now it feels level with the rest of the camera, and then I'll tighten it back down. You're gonna be a lot more stable. If you're on a tripod, you can always just take that off. The next thing is we are recording to a hard drive or an SSD. And the reason that we record to this is because this camera is capable of recording really high quality photo and video. And when you have something like this, you don't run out of storage as fast, and it actually saves your footage faster. So let's say that you stop recording and your camera dies or runs out of battery. You don't have to worry about that file getting corrupted or disappearing or not being able to open, because it writes so fast to a hard drive. But when you look at this, you're like, well, I can't really put it in anywhere. So that's why you have this little clamp mount. You can just clamp the actual hard drive into place like this. But now you've got to figure out where do you want to put it. And this is totally preference. Some people are like, let me put it over here. Some people want it here. Some people want it on top of the handle. It's a tiny little screw right here in the center that you'll need to add. I think personally the best spot for it is going to be on top of this handle, because then it's out of the way. It's not going to be, sitting over top of any of your buttons, and you're going to plug the USB-C into these side ports. You can just put it wherever you think it fits, wherever you want it to be, but it's totally up to you and what you're comfortable with. I'm going to take this and we're going to place it so that the actual port is facing out this way. And right here, there's a little clamp. You want to plug your USB in and tighten that clamp so that your USB plug doesn't just pull out at some point. And then you just run it right here and plug it in on the USB-C port on the side. So at that point, you're technically ready to record if you want to. I mean, it is just a matter of putting a lens on. But there are other options like, the top handle. And you'll see this one has kind of like a rail system right here. So you can slide it right here in a little slot there, tighten it down, just kind of carry it like this. Just kind of depends on what you want to do. All right, next step is obviously adding a lens. We've got the Sigma 16mm, and this is an auto lens. And this is going to be the easiest option for you because you don't have to worry about doing something manually. There's just 2 buttons on the back that are going to help you with autofocus, and they're going to help you with making sure that you have enough light coming through the aperture, which we'll get to. It's not that complicated. What you'll do to remove the lens cap, just press this little button beside the lens and twist and pop that cover off. And then you have a little cover on the back of the lens. And if you notice, there's a dot usually on the back of the lens, and then there's a dot right here on the front where the lens will go. And you want to line those 2 dots up and then turn and click it in place. And you're ready to go. I'll put my Allen wrench back in the bottom here so I don't lose it. Here at the bottom, you have a little door, which is where your battery goes. You also will have this power adapter. If you're shooting just a video in a room and you're just needing this on a tripod, I would always suggest plugging this into an extension cord or plugging it into the wall, because then you don't have to worry about the battery dying. It just plugs in the side near the USB-C. At that point, we're gonna need to jump into the menu and make sure that this camera is set up to where it is the easiest it can possibly be for you to get going. So first things first, we're gonna turn the camera on, a little switch up here. We'll see how much battery we have. And so you're going to go through the setup menu. This is a touch screen. So you're going to see English, hit OK. And right away, it takes you to the camera. There's some settings you can change, though, to make sure that everything is working how it needs to be. I've actually, since I've got the hard drive in, I can look down here, and there's a tiny little thing that says T7, or it'll say whatever hard drive you have. And it'll show you how much time left recording you actually have on that hard drive. But we need to change some settings to make sure this is the most optimized for you. So there's a tiny little menu button, looks like a hamburger. You're going to touch that button and you're going to open up this menu. Now what you don't want to be recording in is Blackmagic RAW footage. That is a very specific type of cinema footage that you need a specific program for. So you're going to touch ProRes over here. The next thing you want to do is you want to move, instead of being on HQ or 422, these are quality buttons, move it down to LT, because it's a good balance between a really good high quality and not taking up too much space. You'll notice now that you have resolution. This is how many pixels you have. You're probably familiar with these terms, 1080p, 4K, things like that. You can shoot at 4K, but most things on social media don't even let you upload something in 4K. So I would say move it on down to 1080, because you're gonna have totally enough resolution to be fine on that. But if you wanted to, you could shoot in 2K or Ultra HD. So either one of these on this side is gonna be fine. So let's do HD. You'll see a little arrow button over here. You're gonna tap that and it's gonna be more of the menu. Here is where you're going to want to change your dynamic range. There are a few different file formats when recording videos that can help in a more professional setting. For example, there's one called log or film format. And what happens is that it looks really gray. And that's just because it kind of evens out the lighting and lets a professional color adjust it a little more. We don't want to be on that, because then all your footage will look gray and it adds an extra step. So let's tap over here in the dynamic range to video, and that way it just is the color that is actually happening in the room. The next thing is your frame rate. So a video is a bunch of pictures taken back to back. Just, a bunch of pictures, but the question is how many of those pictures are in a second? Most movies are at 24 frames per second, so I would say that's totally fine to sit on. A lot of people will move this arrow and put it up to 30 frames per second, and those are totally fine. But we're gonna want to make sure some other settings are in place based on our frame rate. Right here, you're gonna see at the bottom of the menu, preferred media for recording. This is where we're gonna tell the camera that we would prefer it if it would record straight to the USB. So we'll do that and select it and keep going over. We wanna move over to monitor. You're gonna tap monitor up here at the top screen. Now, there are a few things that I really like to have in place so that I know what's going on. One would be the focused assist. It's a little switch right here. I'm gonna tap it, it's gonna turn on. What focus assist is when something is actually not blurry and it's in focus, you will see little tiny orange outlines around whatever you're filming. And so when you're filming a person, it may be that their hair or their eyes have a little bit of orange in them. That way you know that your camera is in focus. The other thing I like to have is the grid. It looks like it was already on here, but the grid is gonna have just a bunch of little boxes, and it's gonna make sure that you're centered and that your framing is good. So now that we've talked about frame rate, we need to make sure that your camera is doing what we call shutter speed. So you're gonna go to setup, and you're gonna scroll these little arrows until you see shutter angle and shutter speed, and just tap shutter speed. So once you have all of those settings in place, you've got your hard drive plugged in, make sure you remember this hard drive is going to be only for your camera. So don't unplug it and don't take it and plug it into your computer to move files or documents or whatever. This is your camera's memory. So don't mess with it. Now that we are in the camera, we need to talk about what these buttons do. So up here at the top, we've got an auto aperture setting. And what an aperture is it's inside of the lens. And think about it like a human eye. When you widen your eyes, you're letting more light in. And when you squint your eyes, you're letting less light in. Okay? So when your picture is too bright, you want your aperture to be a little closed or something like that. You can just press this button, and since this lens is auto, it will detect what you need. The next one under it is a little plus button, and this is your focus. So you can actually point this and hold it and press it, and you'll feel the lens actually, like a motor inside of it, change and autofocus on whatever you have centered in there. If you ever need to adjust it manually, you can just spin this little wheel and you'll see it changing. And when it's changing, you'll see the orange highlighting the things that are in focus, and you'll see it move. So I'd say just mess with it a little bit so you can get used to how it feels. And when you need to just focus on somebody really quick, press the little plus button and you've got it. So the next thing is we have a couple of buttons up here on the top of the camera. We've got one called ISO, we've got an S, and that stands for shutter speed, and we have a WB, which is for white balance. We've got your record button, and then we have the picture button. Most of the time you're going to be using the record button, but if you want to take a picture, just press that and you'll see just on your screen it'll say still shot, and you can go in and get those off your hard drive. But we need to talk about these and get them set in place in a way that you don't have to mess with all that much. So you're going to press first the S for shutter speed. That's going to pull up this little menu at the bottom. And a good rule is you look up here, you see your frames per second is 30. So what you want to do is look for this little fraction at the bottom, and you're going to say, what's double of 30? 60. So just click that. That's going to make sure that your shutter is opening and closing at a speed that doesn't mess around with your actual frame rate. It's honestly just an easy rule to remember. Whatever the number is on frames per second, double it and make sure that's in the bottom of this little fraction. And you can just leave that set. You don't have to mess with that ever again. ISO is just kind of how much light you've got coming in. And so if you ever feel like it's just not enough light, you know, you do the auto thing where you get the lens looking good and you're thinking, oh, it's just too dark. Press the ISO button and you can run the scroll to bring in a little more light as needed. It's got a pretty wide range of like, if it's really bright outside, maybe pull it down to 200. If it's really dark in a room, you can pull it all the way up to 10,000, whatever. Just remember, this helps you get more light, less light. The more you mess around with it, the more it makes sense. I tend to keep mine around 400 and try to keep it as close to 400 as possible, but sometimes it's just not possible. White balance just helps your footage look good. If you press the little WB up there, you come up with this menu, and they all have these different logos for kind of different light settings. One is for if you're out in the sun, you can tap that. It'll get it to where it looks pretty close to what it needs on a sunny day. You've got one for if you're just in a room and it's warm lighting, one for fluorescent lights, one for if you're in the shade, one for a cloudy day. But there's one over here that's AWB. It means auto white balance. You can tap that button and you can point it at something white in the room. It can be like this wall over here and do update. And the camera will automatically say, okay, that's supposed to look white. I'm going to adjust the color and make it look white. So very simple stuff going on. The more you use it, the more it makes sense. And so at that point, all you really need to do is you need to hit record. And when you hit record, you'll see this red start. And you'll see this red highlight down here. And at that point, you're recording video. To stop it, press the red button again. If you want to go watch whatever you recorded, there's a little play button. Press the play button. It brings up the player. You're still going to see all of the focus, lighting, and all of that stuff, but you can press play on the touch screen, and you'll see your footage right there. In order to get back to recording, you just press the recording button, and it takes you back to the camera. The other thing is, you may be thinking, Jonathan, what if we want to plug a microphone in? How do we get that set up? Well, you can buy all sorts of microphones and adapters, and they'll plug in here. If you have a question about that, you can send me a message or something like that. You can plug in headphones on the side as well so you can hear what the camera's hearing. There's a microphone port. There's another type of microphone port. But when you plug one in, you'll need to hit the little hamburger button, go to audio, and here's where you can change what your actual setting is. And you'll have to change both sides because it's a stereo. You're getting two different microphones. The built-in microphones on the camera are really good. They're right here. And they sound really great even when you're in a kind of noisy environment. But if you want to plug a microphone in, you just plug it in, and then you'll go to each of these things and you'll select which port, and you'll see it monitor right here so you know that you're on the right one. I know that now the camera microphones are active because it's hearing me and I'm seeing it meter. If you feel like you don't have enough volume, you can just push these scrollers up and adjust the volume. You never want it to really be in the high yellow or the red because that means that it's going to sound really grainy and not like a good quality. So right there, that's how you set up the audio. A few things that are just extra. This magnifying glass with a plus, you can press that and you can zoom in and drag around in it. There's a button above that you never really want to press. It's called HFR, which is a high frame rate mode. You don't need that. Always make sure that's off. When you press that button, you'll see it pop up in the corner that it's active. And it's really something it's no need to really even go into it. It's just for a professional shoot of some sort. But just whenever you're looking, make sure that there's no HFR up in the corner. Just don't even touch that button. I've done it before and I had to re-record what I was doing, so don't do that. All right, so that's basically everything that you need to know to get going. There are so many settings in here that you can dive into and get into, but not all of them are really necessary, especially for just starting out with this. And so those settings that I said to lock in, remember, you want to make sure your frame rate and your shutter speed are right. You want to make sure that you're recording in ProRes at the LT quality. And you want to make sure that you have your accessories attached in a way that's comfortable for you. It seems like a lot, it's not. I promise once you set it up, you're done. You can leave it, it's pretty much on cruise control unless you don't want it to be. If there's ever a case where you think you might need to do something different, just reach out to me and I'll be glad to help you out.